Welcome to Molner's Table. I'm so excited to have my good friend, Bill Koenigsberg, founder and CEO of Horizon Media, the world's largest independent media agency, joining me for my second conversation in this series. Bill has excelled in a highly competitive industry against giant publicly traded advertising holding companies, much larger, by doing a number of things right. But perhaps most basically, he puts his clients' interests first. I miss running up to your office and seeing you, but let's get started. We've got a few things I want to get to, and I know we only have a short amount of time. Bill, our country is witnessing a historic moment in the fight for racial justice. American businesses are trying to figure out what they can do to make a meaningful difference and fight systemic racism. As the CEO of the largest independent media agency in the world, tell me about some of the things that you're doing at this extraordinary moment in time.
So, John, I'll cover that a couple of different ways. And yeah, it's interesting. You use the term extraordinary moment in time. And I keep telling everybody, I hope that this is not just another moment in time and that this is a time to change the moment. Because I think we're all tired of just another moment in time and having history repeat itself. So the first thing is that from a client perspective, there is no beginning, middle, and end. This is an ongoing journey, and I think we're going to see more change from all of the conversations that I have had with my clients and industry leaders. I think we're going to see more change in the next 2 years than we've seen in the last 20, and that is very, very, very encouraging. And from the way that brands need to behave in the marketplace right now, it's about tone, obviously. It's about authenticity. It's about having a soul. And it's actually about having a voice. And we believe that this is not a time for our clients to hide, but it's a time for our clients to come out and have a voice and have a position and have a conscience that their consumers really want to see. And consumers are demanding that. I mean, all eyes are on brands right now. And we're doing a lot of in-market research that shows that authenticity, tonality, position, voice, commitment are critically important.
Has the role of the CEO in all of this changed specifically, or, and if it has, how so? What do you see yourself doing differently, and has the culture and the DNA at Horizon that existed before this moment helped you in accelerating where you need to be?
It's interesting. If you think about the role of the CEO in the past, the CEO's role was to hold everybody accountable. It's flipped. The employees are now holding the CEO accountable. So it's completely flipped. The dynamic has flipped, and I'm very accountable now to 2,600 employees. They're watching every move I make. They're watching everything I say. They're watching my ability to carry out my mission as a company and what we stand for. So when you say has the role changed, it is completely flipped upside down, where now I am accountable to the 2,600 people as opposed to them all being accountable to me.
Let's talk about the workplace. Let's take it a step further. The New York Times had an article the other day, you may have seen it, about virus-proofing the workplace. You have incredible offices. We're so lucky to have some space in them. They're decked out with sleep pads, rooftop terraces, game rooms, cafes, and more. It is an extraordinary, open, warm, friendly environment that people love being in. But now all of a sudden, these open floor plans leave little room for social distancing. How are you reimagining this amazing space you have? And how do you think the Horizon office of the very near future will look?
Yeah, it's really sad, number one, to think about the beautiful space that we built, and we now are not going to be necessarily being able to use it, at least for the next foreseeable future, the way that we envisioned it.
Yeah.
And we are going to have a phase one back to the office beginning in August, but that phase one, John, is going to be very small. It's for probably about 15% of our employees who want to come back, both in New York and LA. It's to create a space where those who can't work from home can come in. It's to create at least a little bit more energy, that you can come in and see some of your fellow employees. But with 15% of my employee base, and use New York as an example, where I have 2,000 employees in New York, I'll have about 250 people in the New York office at that particular point in time. So at a floor where I could fit 300 people, I'll have about 30, because we have 8 floors in that building. I have about 30 per floor. So number one, plenty of room for social distancing. And we're obviously going to have all of the precautions in place with regards to tracing and temperature checking and cleanliness and, making sure everything is sanitized. So we will have all of that. But it's going to be a really slow emergence back. And I don't think we will ever have more than 50% of our workforce come back until this virus either is completely eradicated, goes away, there's some great new drug that comes on the market that will significantly diminish the severity of it, or a vaccine. And then on top of that, I believe that the future workforce, we will have a significant amount of people that we will be allowed to work remotely, because through this process, we've learned that we can connect and work just as efficiently. And I'm actually excited about that. I can now recruit from anywhere in the world. I can now give people the luxury of not having to go through that 2-hour commute that some people go through. So I'm actually excited about it. And that's the silver lining in some of this.
Bill, let me shift gears a little bit. I'm curious in the advice you would offer to people starting their career today. The world's changing in important ways. What can you think of some insights or advice you might offer?
The employee of tomorrow needs to have their own brand and needs to stand out in a different way. So why are you different? Why should I hire you over somebody else? And I think it's critically important, and their brand is very important. We're seeing a lot of the younger students coming out of colleges today really defining their own brand. And it's about going the extra mile as well, but it's really standing out in a crowd. And I think that's very important.
And I'm also curious if you could point to a decision you made early on that was pivotal as you look back, that you got right, and it was an important one to make the right call on.
I think a pivotal point, John, that I went through was back about 10, 11 years ago, when before I moved the office to Tribeca, and we were in about 4 buildings in Manhattan because of our expansion. And I was at a pivotal point about, did I want to consolidate in one big space or not, which was going to cost me a ton of money. And at the same time, that was around 2008, 2009, when the world was going through another huge recession. And if I bet big and I consolidated everybody in this one big space, and I went to a whole new environment, and I was thinking about building the office of the future and what it might look like, the risk I was taking in terms of how the company had to grow for me to be able to afford that. And I was really nervous about it. And I decided to do it. And I decided to make the investment. As you know, we moved downtown to Tribeca. And I will tell you, it was the best decision I ever made, from an environment perspective, from a client retention perspective, from a new business perspective, from an employee recruitment and retention perspective. That environment, that change, that investment has paid off tenfold for me. And I never, ever imagined that it would have the effect that it had. And I was very nervous about that decision, and I made it, and it was the right decision to make at the time.
What do you miss most about this period that people refer to as BC, before COVID? What is it that you miss most?
Oh, I miss so much, John. I'll go back to I really will never take for granted again the human connection of being with friends and a group of people, and the energy that you get from that. And there's some energy, no doubt about it, this way, but not the energy when you're right next to each other and you're able to have that closeness and that adrenaline that you get from that warm feeling that you get from being around people who you value. And I really, really, really miss that in a big way. And traveling. I don't mean traveling for business. I mean, traveling for pleasure. As you know, my wife is Dutch and we spend a bunch of time in Europe, and I miss all of that greatly. And the luxuries that I think a lot of us took for granted: going to a baseball game, going to a basketball game, going to a concert, sitting in a theater, all of that has been stripped from us. And I miss a lot of that.
Okay, I'm going to ask one final question, and be gentle on me. Bill, why in the world did you decide to invest in a startup business like KCM, Katie Couric Media?
So obviously, John, and I actually, it's interesting. I always feel I keep reversing things. I actually was amazingly flattered that you allowed me to support the two of you. And I mean that. When you think about, and you're a modest guy, but when you think about your track record and what you accomplished in your career in the past, and obviously, the icon and legend and amazing journalistic ethos that Katie has and what she created. So two incredibly very successful people that had a great moral compass and really, I think, had a pulse on the world. But then when I started to think about my own business and my own clients, and you and Katie were much more about purpose-driven before purpose-driven became the flavor of the month for everybody. You guys were thinking about that 4 years ago when most marketers were not. They were just dabbling in that. And I believed, I go back to marketers needing a soul and a purpose and what they stand for. And when I thought about what Katie could do from a purpose-driven perspective and marrying her with brands, I was really intrigued with that. I also felt that Katie had an incredible voice, and you started to think about all the extensions of what she's doing with her podcast series, what she's doing with her book, what she's doing with some of the documentaries that she's now involved in from a purpose-driven perspective, that this thing could really grow to a really unique content company revolving around a purpose-driven world that wasn't out there. No one was doing that. So I'm always looking for the white space, and I saw an awful lot of opportunity there. And, the success that you've had in a couple of years that you've been in business is pretty remarkable. And I actually think, I know it's what you and Katie expected. I believe that. But it actually is so incredibly impressive about how well the company has done, because I know how much hard work it takes. And obviously now you've seen it running an entrepreneurial company, and also the opportunity for Katie to build a younger generation of little Katies.
That's so important to her.
And their voice, and this thing being able to have a lot more topspin and room to grow than I think any of us ever expected. So for me, that's what I saw. And the fact that you kind of let me in the door, it's like, wow, how can I not do this?